Jesús Rafael Soto, whose kinetic compositions have won him worldwide renown, is one of the leading figures in contemporary art. His work consists of visual concepts in which optical vibrations are produced by movement on the part of the viewer. In one such concept, T-shaped metallic rods are placed against a striped background. The lines blend, vanish, and reappear before the eyes of the spectator. Seeing the artist at work in his Paris studio, one might be reminded of an alchemist pursuing in the shadows of his laboratory the will-o'-the-wisp of creating gold. Soto, however, in a reverse of that process, transmutes solid matter into an aerial illusion. While Soto's work can be called neither sculpture nor painting, it partakes of both and adds a fourth dimension, that of time-space. By using wire attached to nylon thread, he advances in the process of eliminating solid form. The square here becomes a mere idea. Instead of being painted on solid ground, it exists only in space. The mind's eye perceives it as if by magic, as it registers on the spectator's retina. The materialization is carried to the extreme in the work Soto calls penetrables. Here, it is not only form that disappears, but also human presence. Soto's work has been analyzed in a book illustrated in highly original fashion by another prominent kinetic artist, Carlos Cruz Diez. The author of the text, the critic and historian Alfredo Bulton, says,
Soto incorpora por primera vez en la historia del arte.
In Soto's work, for the first time in the history of art, space becomes a basic element of composition.
La pintura era un lienzo inmóvil.
Before Soto, painting consisted in a static canvas hanging on a wall.
Ese objeto pictórico, plástico.
Soto's work is a pictoric, plastic creation that engulfs the spectator into its environment, an environment which thus becomes peopled and filled with creative possibilities.
Poblado, lleno de posibilidades.
Prior to Soto, space did not possess an importance of this kind.
No había tenido esa importancia.
Working with 2 sheets of plexiglass and taking the dot as his basic element, he sought to bring about a dynamic sensation of movement. Unsuccessful at first, he eventually discovered that by separating the 2 sheets a little from one another, the effect of movement was achieved by optical illusion as the viewer changed his visual angle. Carrying this idea farther, Soto constructed what he called the nueva box, in which 3 sheets of plexiglass, 2 inches apart, produced both a feeling of movement and an effect of volume. About this time, he became acquainted with Marcel Duchamp's optical machine, a creation which made a great impression on Soto, who was convinced that the effects it produced could only be achieved without the use of a motor. He continued his experiments, in one of which, called Spiral, 2 sheets of plexiglass were separated by a distance of 10 inches. This composition was to constitute the point of departure for his work thereafter. Jean Clay, a French critic, analyzes it thus. Spiral is a work of capital importance, in which Soto resolves the problem of simultaneously incorporating new elements into the work of art. It was at this point that Soto began to speak in an artistic language entirely his own. Soto had never before come so close to attaining his objective of the methodical destruction of all stable form, the molecular breakdown of solids, the dissolution of volume. Moving on from work in plexiglass, Soto began to experiment with the moiré effect, the changes that take place when certain designs and shapes mingle with similar ones in their proximity. He no longer drew painted lines on plexiglass. Their place was taken by metal rods. at the end of the 60s, kinetic art began to assume increasing importance in Europe, the first exhibition featuring the tendency being organized by the Museum of Modern Art in Paris. Frank Popper, a French critic and historian, treated the leading figures of the movement, Soto among them, in a book he called The Birth of Kinetic Art. The dancer Sonia Sanoja used some of the works Soto had on exhibit at the Denise René Gallery as scenery for a contemporary ballet. After producing the metallic structures which Boulton called pre-penetrables, Soto felt the need to bring about a more obvious fusion of spectator and composition. It was thus that he came to create the great penetrable which stands in the Municipal Museum of Amsterdam. Boulton declares that, seeking the integration of man with art, Soto conceived of a form in which the process could be fully realized. The traditional role of the viewer as a non-participating spectator is reversed. Instead, he becomes the center around which the work of art revolves. By this time, Soto was recognized as one of the most important artists in Europe. The Paris Museum of Modern Art presented an exhibit dedicated to his work, the main feature being an immense penetrable placed in the square before the building. This penetrable is one of the most important works belonging to the Museum of Ciudad Bolivar. Erected in Soto's birthplace in 1973, it bears the artist's name. In its collection, works dating from the various period of his development find a place alongside compositions by many of the most representative figures in modern abstract art: Mondrian, Malevich, Arp, Devasne, Man Ray, and Vasarely, to name but a few. The Guggenheim Museum of New York presented a retrospective exhibit of Soto's work, in which the place of honor was assigned to an immense penetrable. This exhibit traveled afterwards to the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington, where it was the first one-man show ever displayed in that institution. Not since the celebrated mobiles of Alexander Calder had the United States public the opportunity to view a work so original and changeable in character. It was confronted with a totally new concept of space.
Nosotros tenemos un concepto del espacio muy diferente al espacio renacentista, donde el hombre...
We have a very different idea of space from that of the Renaissance. Space, for Renaissance man, was what he saw before him. In its regard, he was both spectator and judge. Thanks to recent scientific research, it has become possible to show that man does not stand face to face with space, but instead stands immersed in it. Art is of great social value. If science contributes to a better life, if political measures bring about economic progress, art plays a major role in the area of feeling and spiritual communication. We artists are witnesses of all that goes on around us, and consider our work contemporary in that it approximates closely contemporary scientific and philosophical research. Soto's concept of art as an integral element in modern life has been put into practice in the entrance hall he designed for the Renault automobile factory in Paris. Here, his theories have been incorporated into the building's architecture. As the doors are opened, they produce an effect of dynamic vibration. The kinetic artist has found a new means of identifying himself with the world. He does not wish to confine himself to the limited dimensions of a canvas and the small number of persons who come to view it. He wishes to move out into the world, into public places, where all can participate in his creation. Soto has attained total integration in this respect, but in order to achieve it, he was obliged to invent a new language which permits dialogue between empty space and the spectator. Soto has carried his man-centered intermingling of plastic art and architecture to a number of countries. For the Royal Bank of Canada building in Toronto, he created a vertical suspension composed of aluminum tubing. The variety of relationships among its elements offers an endless range of visual possibilities. The former city market of Paris has been replaced by the Place Beaubourg, which daily draws thousands of visitors. Amid street spectacles of every sort, one approaches the Pompidou Center, a combination museum, library, and research center. It is one of the world's great art forums. Only artists of international renown have been invited to exhibit in its galleries. One of them was Soto, who created for the vestibule a hanging progression of great dimensions. Great black and white writings are featured in the main gallery, contrasting with the yellow and white vibrations of the extension located in the middle. In 1982, representative works by Soto were exhibited in Madrid at the Velázquez Palace. The work shown here is a coherent composition which already occupies a place of fundamental importance in the evolution of modern art. It has been organized and developed on the basis of simple, universal elements, rather like a fugue by Bach. As in the case of music, Soto's work is fundamentally immaterial. It is, after all, perceived sensation that constitutes the reality of the universe. Soto holds that my purpose in creating works of art is to reveal to others the phenomena I have discovered. It is not uncommon for an artist to arrive at a point of stagnation in development. Such has not been the case with Jesús Soto, however. His research in the field of visual phenomena is never-ending. It keeps him ever fresh and up-to-date. This exhibit synthesizes all of Soto's artistic theories. Here, static elements acquire temporal values. Solid masses are transformed into concepts. Sculptures become hangings, which engage the spectator in constant dialogue. Volumes do not occupy space, but dissolve into it. Color ceases to be a pigment applied to a surface, undergoing the most unexpected of transmutations in space-time. This is the triumph of kinetic art. Heralded by Naum Gabo in the 1920s, it has been fully realized in the compositions of Soto. My concepts, says Soto, are not to be taken as mere optical games. On the contrary, they present a serious challenge to the eye, educating it to broaden its field of knowledge and to develop a level of perception that lies beyond the retina, in the depths of the spirit. Soto's work is evidence of something new in the world of art, a visual concept suggestive of reality, but not naturalistic in effect. There is, however, a strong link between Soto's work and nature. Natural phenomena are transformed by the artist's intuition and take on a new dimension. Soto has given us a new interpretation of space, time, and movement. His great contribution to art has been to create an ever-evolving spectacle, a continuing mutation of forms that die away only to be reborn, a labyrinth through which the viewer wanders with never-ending delight to both eye and spirit.